So we're gonna do a questions from a or with a counselor. I guess it's questions for a counselor is what it is. Questions for a counselor. The first question we have received, and it's one that we get in many different formats or variations, and it's that someone recently lost somebody. So I'll see that I recently lost my father, I recently lost my child or a spouse, and they'll go on to say my heart hurts, or I don't see a reason to live, I'm severely depressed. What do I do now to continue on? So Jamie, what are some suggestions you can give for
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. So first off, let's talk about the stages of grief, right? There's 5 of them. I mean, accepted stages of grief, whatever. Denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance, right? Now, what I want you to understand about that is that those 5 stages, that's not linear. You're not going to start at denial, then move on to anger, then move on to bargaining, then move on to acceptance, and oh yeah, I forgot about depression, right? We're not going to do that. You can experience all those in 5 minutes, right? And the idea is to never get stuck in one of those stages. That's really it, right? Like, okay, so I don't want to get stuck, but yeah, but my heart hurts. I got it. Let's talk about the purpose of grief. The purpose of grief is to not get over what just happened, because you'll never get over it. Like, let's just be clear about that. Like, there are still days today that I think about my grandpa. He was the closest man in my life, right? I didn't have a dad growing up, so my grandpa was my dude, right?
Right.
I'm not over that. I'll never be over that. There are still days where it's like, man, I wish my grandpa was here, right? Or I wish I could call him because I want to ask him this question. Or wouldn't it be great to talk to him about that, right? So if you have a good relationship with someone, though, you kind of learn to know what they would say, right? So you kind of play that out in your head a little bit. What would happen if I called my grandpa? Well, you know what he would say. He would say blah, 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 blah. And that makes you feel good, right? So the purpose of grief isn't to get over it. The purpose of grief is to learn how to live with it.
Good point.
How do I move forward today knowing I'll never see my grandpa again, or my dad, or whoever it is that you've lost? And look, I want you to understand, I'm not being flippant, and I'm not saying this is easy, but that's the goal. And then, the other thing that we like to think about is, how can I honor their life? How can I honor them? So my grandfather died in 2001. My son was born in 2008. He knows my grandpa. How does he know my grandpa, Mark?
Hopefully you've talked about him an awful lot.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just because he's dead doesn't mean we don't talk about him.
Right.
That's not a taboo subject, right? I tell my son all the time, and now your grandpa, my grandpa, so your great grandpa, would think or say or whatever, right? And that really, that helps level set that expectation of, just because they're dead doesn't mean they're gone. Like, gone from our life. We got to shut it out. Don't talk about that no more. Here's the hard part, Mark. A lot of times we get emotional about thinking and talking about that loved one being gone.
Right.
That tends to be, now just bear with me, I know this could sound a little insensitive, right? That tends to be selfish on our part. Now, I'm not saying that's all the time. Here's what I mean by that. Especially like our parents. Typically, as they get older, right, the quality of life goes down, and they're not living to the quality that they would like to live. My grandpa would say, well, that's not living then. He worked until the day he got sick, right? So he's out there swinging a hammer and building stuff.
Wow.
Right? But then once he got sick, he was very independent. You got to figure, this man was a short order cook at 8 years old in a restaurant. in a diner,
My
right?
gosh.
Yeah. So he's always been like on the go and doing. Well, now he's got heart problems. He can't even walk without a walker. He doesn't have strength to stand up. He's like, man, this ain't living. This isn't living. So in that sense, yes, I don't get to hang out with him, but he's got relief from that anymore. He's not suffering anymore. Because being alive and not being able to do what you want to do, for some people, I'm not saying for everybody, for some people, that's almost like torture.
Right.
So there's a level of that. And then there's a lot of cultures that actually throw parties and celebrate their life. You ever seen a funeral in New Orleans?
I have just on YouTube or TV. Yes. Yeah.
It's a celebration, man. They're walking down the street playing, like a jazz band's going on. It's a celebration.
Right.
If they've moved on. And that's like, let's celebrate their life. Don't mourn for me. I always ask, what would you like for me? What would my grandpa want me to do? Would he want me to sit around feeling sorry for myself? Or would he want to see me go succeed and do something? Well, of course, he'd want to see me succeed and go do something.
Certainly.
So that's kind of how I think about grief, Mark.
And one more time, what was the 5 stages? Just to
Yep. So the 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Okay.
Right?
Good.
Because, again, we just don't want to get stuck, man. It's okay to, like, they call them feelings because we're supposed to feel it. So don't push that out. Feel it, be with it. It sucks. I'm mad. I don't like it. Okay, that's fine. You can be mad and you don't have to. Look, real sensitive subject. My wife, we just lost her daughter here last couple of
Gosh. So sorry.
It was a overdose with heroin and fentanyl. She was 28. And how do you comfort someone? You do what you got to do, honey. Whatever you need. You need to break things. You got to throw things. You just need to sit there and cry. You want to sit there and say nothing, do that too. I'm just going to be what you need me to be.
Good advice. Yeah.
And then that's what I did, right? And I just was with her and we walked through it. And, she had, I would say at first it was good hours, not good days, good hours. And then she would spontaneously combust into tears again, right? And that just kind of, as you accept it, as you just live with it and you be with it, right? That time of sadness starts spreading out, right? Talking about it removes the darkness from it, and then it allows, because there's acceptance in there again. I think we've talked about acceptance and resistance in another video. Boy, when we resist it, because that's what we're doing. They shouldn't be dead. I can't believe it. No. We got to accept it, because acceptance is where we actually get to embrace and then celebrate, right? So now, when you talk to Sandra about it, still is hard for her, right? But we're able to say, man, she was a great person, fun to be around. We had these laughs together. Like we've moved on into the celebration part, right?
Right.
Well,
yeah, that's great advice for everybody, I think. And I'm obviously sorry about the loss, but it's great advice. Hopefully people can get some takeaways. And I've heard you say it before. My wife lost her father. And when you and I were talking about that, I think it was I've used it a couple of times since then to try to learn to live with it and not get over it, because the goal is not to get over it. The goal is to learn to live with it. And I think that's good advice also.
You think about memories, just like, okay, here. So another thing about this, because I think this is just really good. You think you've heard that term closure. Well, I just needed closure.
Yeah.
Closure is a myth.
Right.
There's no such thing as closure, right? The memory gets put away necessarily, but it's still there. A smell, a sound, a feeling can make that thing rush right back in, dude. I mean, I can't tell you how many times driving down the road and something will trigger a memory from high school or the Navy. I mean, it's like, man, that's 30 years ago, 40 years ago, So we don't get, there's no closure. It's just, it's over. How do I move forward now?
One of our questions we see quite often is, and there's many formats for it, but I've been down or really sad lately the past few days. What can I do to help change my spirits? Jamie, what can you suggest in these situations?
This is obviously a very complex question, and I'm sure the answer is going to sound very obvious, but we have to get up and do the things that we know to do. So like here's one of the reasons why COVID was so bad. Like people working at home, what did people not do every day?
Socialize, get out, experience life. It's something I've noticed.
Okay, so just wind it back a little bit more. What else do they not do?
Converse with others, experience situations.
How about taking a shower?
I guess some people wouldn't have. Yeah.
How about getting dressed for the day?
Making your bed, small tasks, small wins.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But we don't realize how important it is to make your bed. You don't realize how important it is to just wipe your face off and shower up. You don't realize how important it is to put blue jeans on that zip rather than the stretchy pants.
Right.
Right? So we're sitting around at home. We're not feeling good about ourselves. We got stretchy pants on. We've got a sweatshirt or hoodie on, right? Our bed is made, and we've only moved from the bedroom to the living room. So we've got 27 steps in by noon.
Right.
You cannot feel good about yourself that way.
No, and I want to add on to that. I've noticed in the past, there's been a few times, and it's a little bit of a cycle where I have a little bit of depression, and I know if I go for a good long walk, it might help. But because of the depression, you don't have the motivation to actually get up and do that walk. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword where I notice if I do take this initiative to get up, put some clothes on, whatever, shoes, tennis shoes, and go for that mile walk, when I get back, I feel so much better. But sometimes it's hard to take that first step.
Yeah, and that's really, so you said a couple things. Like you said the small victories, and then you said like you got to just get up and show up, right? So here's the thing. I wouldn't even say do a mile. I would say walk to the end of the driveway.
Right.
Anything. Because if you're down already, the thought of putting a mile in is overwhelming.
Sure, absolutely.
I can walk to the end of the driveway a couple times. Or, because now that I've got my tennis shoes on, and if it's, it's warm, I've got my shorts and t-shirt on, I walk to the end of the driveway and I walk back up to the garage. I'm like, well, I could probably make it to the end of the block. And then I might turn around and walk to the end of the block. But then once I'm there, it's like, I'm just going to turn left here and go around the block rather than just walking back. Right?
Right.
So finding those little things. Don't think, oh, I got to get up and work out. Don't do that. I got to get up and stretch. I got to get up and do 10 jumping jacks. I got to get up and walk to the end of the driveway. It's those little victories that does, Mark, is that builds momentum.
I think the little victories can be looked at in many different ways. I'll give you another example. Sometimes at my job, I have so many large, overwhelming tasks that I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything, and it becomes like a weight on my shoulders. This is all this stuff to do. I don't know where to go, and I'll find that if I take on a few very small accomplishable tasks, I get that sense of accomplishment, which then helps me rethink the bigger tasks and how I'm going to do them. It doesn't mean they're done. It doesn't mean I'm going to tackle them today, but still those like 2 or 3 small wins can make a big difference in my mindset.
Well, it does, because now you've got a victory. You've got a W in your bag, right? It's like, okay, today was a success, right? I got something done. There's that old fable about how to eat an elephant. You eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Sure.
But we get focused on, oh my gosh, I got to eat the elephant. Oh my gosh, I got to clean the house. Oh, I got to cut the yard today. Because, cutting the yard isn't just cutting the yard. It's weed eating, it's blowing, it's pulling weeds, it's trimming bushes, right? It's all that stuff too. It's like, man,
Right.
4 hours. I don't have 4 hours. Okay. Pick one task and do it.
Right.
I like to do that, man. I just like what's one thing I can do? And then I do that. It's like, okay, at the end of the day, I'm better than I was yesterday. I got something more done today. Like I said, I think the shower for me is the best thing that you can do. Get up and
I would
shower,
agree. Yeah.
right? I could take a shower. I could take a shower and just put on blue jeans. Even if I'm going to sit on the couch and watch TV, I'm going to feel better about myself because I am ready.
I feel so much better after a shower. That is so true for me as well.
Yeah. Right. So just, and it's probably good hygiene too.
Something else. Good.
But think about that though. When you don't shower, because you're like, well, I'm not going to see anybody. I don't need to do that. That's okay every once in a while. But you add up a couple days of that. Mentally, you're thinking, I'm kind of gross.
Right.
Now you start that negative self-talk. Right. And that can really accelerate that downhill slide.
It can. Yes. Negative self-talk. There's a lot of take 2 minutes messages about that. That it's just, you should avoid that or learn to not have that happen in your head. You should be your biggest fan.
That's right. That's right. So, I'm not talking that Stuart Smalley, by golly, people like me. I'm not talking that, right? But I do gotta talk kindly to myself. So, well, if I were responsible to help me, I wouldn't let me sit around in dirty clothes.
Right.
And be dirty. I'd be like, look, come on, man. Let's go take a shower. I know we're going to wipe you off. We're going to wash you down real quick, brush your teeth. We're going to get you dressed, and then we'll get you out here to watch TV.
So on this topic of ways to help yourself get into a better place mentally, I've heard a lot, and obviously Take 2 Minutes does a lot around gratitude journaling, recognizing things for which you should be grateful. Do you think that's a powerful way of helping people help themselves?
Absolutely powerful. So have you heard of the term in psychology called priming?
I have not.
Okay, cool. So what kind of car do you drive?
An SUV?
What color?
Black?
What make?
Land Rover?
Yeah. Okay. So before you bought your black specific Land Rover, how many of those did you see on the road?
Well, quite a few, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, no, you didn't.
I didn't.
You didn't notice them until you started thinking about buying one.
I could see that. You recognize them more once you have it. Yeah.
Once it's on your mind,
right,
you see it everywhere.
Yeah, and that's probably what I do. I see it everywhere because that reason. Yeah.
Right. Because think about this. We purchased a Raptor a while back. Right. I never even saw Raptors on this.
Right.
Every once in a while I'd see it, but they never stood out. But once I got my Raptor, it's like, man, everybody has a Raptor. What the heck? Right. So you see that all the time where it's that I have a gray Jetta. Oh yeah. I don't ever see those on the road. Everybody likes to be unique necessarily. Right.
Right.
Then you buy it. You're like, my gosh, there's gray Jettas everywhere. So that's the same thing that's the psychology between a gratitude journal.
Okay.
As I'm writing things out, now my mind is starting to think about what am I grateful for? So then throughout the entire day, I'm watching for things I'm grateful for.
Makes total sense. And that just helps more and more with the positivity in your head.
Right. I've been primed for it. And then I started. So now it becomes this revolving synergy. It reinforces itself and makes it stronger.
Very good.
Right. So that's why that gratitude journal for Take 2 Minutes is so powerful.
Good. So there's a couple ways people can think about how to help themselves.
That's right. Small steps.
Appreciate the information.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found that discussion helpful and interesting. If there are any topics you would like to hear discussed, head over to take2minutes.org and use the Contact Us form to submit your suggestions. Also, if you appreciate our content, sign up for an account at take2minutes.org. Subscriptions help us to continue generating new content. Thanks again.